Hey guys, Scott here. Today I want to talk about the Xenomorph's counterplay. From the community, I've seen the counterplay sort of branching out in two directions. One is the actual tentacle itself. People are talking about dodging the tail whip and, trying to predict when the killer is going to do it because it's not really enough time to react to it and dodge it. There's enough time to react to it in like Dead Hard, but you can't change the rotation of your character enough to actually effectively dodge it at a certain range. So there's the whole school of people that are saying that you need to just predict the killer, and it's a 50-50, sort of like when Huntress has a hatchet out, and you need to kind of try to play around that, which is a little silly because it would be like Huntress if she had normal movement speed and also wasn't slowed down while winding up her hatchet. It's a very different ballgame there. But then there is the other school of logic people are using where the power is a punishment for not using turrets correctly, and turrets are the actual counterplay. If you want to look at it a certain way, you could say that Xenomorph is sort of like Oni, where the killer is supposed to be very oppressive in their power because it's a power that you let them get. That's sort of the logic that side of the argument is coming from. And to that, I don't really agree with that either, because if you look at someone like Oni, what do you have to do to get a power? Well, you have to actually hit someone. You have to earn a hit on a player. And after that, then you need to chase them around and then get more blood or hit another player. There's a time investment. It takes a while, and the result is you get a very powerful ability for a short amount of time. With this killer, you don't really do anything to earn it. You just crawl in a tunnel for 3 seconds and you have your power. You can just sort of get that whenever you want. And if you want to look at it in the other direction and say, well, it's because that the survivors are not using turrets correctly. So it's basically punishing survivors for not using turrets properly. And that's why it's so strong. And that's why the tail whip is supposed to be as strong as it actually is. The thing is, though, the turrets on this side of the argument are not enough of a factor for a survivor to be doing the wrong choice. You could have the most perfectly placed turret ever, but you still generally have enough time to react to it and hit it with your tail and just keep going. And it just doesn't really fix anything. And I think that's sort of the issue with that side of the argument, is that it doesn't really matter how perfect you are with your turrets. The only way you can have turrets be effective in actually making the killer lose the crawler mode is if you have two turrets. If you double up on turrets, well, then the killer is in a scenario where as they're chasing, they break one of the turrets with their tail, but as they're in recovery, the other turret is bringing them out of their power. And that makes it so, yeah, that will remove you from crawler mode. But you need to look at the actual time it took and the amount of effort it took for two survivors to drag from two separate turret holders, two turrets in the same area, just so the killer will be hampered for a little bit of time. It seems like the time investment is not quite there, because I'm sure you can time it. The amount of time it takes one survivor to take a thing out, drag it over, you're very slow while doing it, place it down, then move on, and then another survivor has to do the exact same thing. It just takes way too much time for the survivor to do it compared to how long it takes to get the power back. What I've been doing as Xenomorph is, if I do get in that scenario where I get hit by two turrets at the same time and I do lose my crawler mode, I just go back in the tunnel and I just jerk off for 3 seconds, and then I get my power back. And when I say jerk off, I mean I just go back and forth in the tunnel. I don't traverse anywhere. I just get my power back in just a couple of seconds. So I get my power back in 3 seconds. It probably took them a grand total of 30 seconds to get the two turrets in that area to take me out of the power. It ends up not really being symmetrical at all, to the point where I don't really care if people double up on turrets, because I'm going to get my power back way quicker than it took them to do that they weren't doing gens and stuff like that. So that is the whole issue with that side of the argument as well. The one effective way to use turrets takes way more time than it takes the killer to get their power back. Now, it comes down to a specific talking point of what is the right amount of time the killer should have to react to a turret and attack it before they can, not have to deal with it anymore. And that is a very specific timing that needs to be, I think, addressed and balanced, because right now, without any add-ons, you have a very tiny window to hear a turret, turn to it, hit it with your tail whip, and then not be taken out of your power. You have maybe half a second to do all of that. It's very, very tight depending on where the turret is placed. If it's in the open especially, you have a very, very tiny window to be able to break that. However, every Xenomorph runs the add-ons, or just a single add-on that makes it so you are staggered slower, or the turrets have less range, effectively doing the same thing. And because of that, because of those add-ons, each individual turret becomes a non-factor. I have plenty of time. There was a turret in Shack. I vaulted into Shack as I was getting blasted with fire. I still had time to complete the vault, turn to the turret, hit it, and then keep chasing. And I was at 75% with the green add-on that reduces stagger. And that makes it so, if it's just one turret, I don't care. They don't do anything. And there's a couple of ways to address this whole turret being the actual counterplay thing, if that's the line of logic we want to go. Again, the other line of logic is that we need to address the tail itself and make that a slightly more counterable thing with more reaction time and keeps turrets how they actually are. It's got to be one or the other, not both, because that would be overkill in my opinion. But here are the options we have for making turrets, I think, more fair. Option number 1 is make it so that the add-ons that reduce the stagger are just not as strong. Because right now, if you run them, you just can they don't matter. Turrets they're a non-factor. So making those turrets be less impactful, because the matter of balance here, it really is based off just the window we want to give killers. That's the skill cap. Do we want to give them 0.5 seconds to react or 1 second to react? And that's what the add-on does. And if we make those add-ons less impactful, it might make them feel a bit more fair, because now it's going to come down to the killer being skillful and very quickly turning to it, hitting it, and then continue chasing at the same time. And that, I think, would be acceptable, at least in my opinion. The other option is we make the tail miss more punishing. And the tail miss is the same thing as hitting a turret as well. So on the PTB, you moved at 1.2 meters a second when you hit a turret with your tail for 3 seconds. Now you move almost twice that speed. So if we just make it so after hitting a turret with your tail, you're slowed down a little bit, and now the survivor can actually make a tiny bit of distance as opposed to essentially 0 distance right now. At least the opportunity cost it took to put that turret up is now met with a roughly equal amount of, distance that the survivor gets in the chase now. So that ends up being a bit more fair. So that's one of the options you can do as well. There's a third option you can do to make these seem more fair, and that is make it so the stagger add-ons actually become base kit. So now it's harder for a individual turret to bring you out. So the real method of bringing the killer out of it would be sort of doubling up on the turrets, and that would be fine. But the problem is, if you're doubling up on turrets, you're using 50% of the map's turrets to do that. And to fix that, you would give survivors like 2 more turrets total. So you can have more area control now, while the killer is also slightly more resistant to the turrets as well. So the survivors have more options to take it out, but the killer is now less threatened by a single lone turret. So in my opinion, those are the 3 options that you can do to make turrets feel like they're a bit more of a factor. Because right now with the add-ons, I don't care about them at all. And I don't think that's necessarily great game design because of how much time it takes survivors to set up duels. It's too much time, and it's not a big enough a deal for me. I found really the most effective way of playing this killer is if you do get taken out of your power, like I said, you actually just go back in a tunnel immediately. It's not like another killer where, if you're Deathslinger and you're reloading, you watch the survivors run away from you. With this killer, if you get taken out of your power, you don't chase anymore. You see which direction they're going, crawl in a tunnel, and then pop out at a tunnel in the direction that they were going. Now, there's a bit of a mind game there. You can maybe think that they might double back and I just pop out of the same tunnel, but not even that, because when you're in the tunnel, you can see their footsteps and see which direction they're traveling. So even if I do get taken out of my power, I don't lose really that much distance in the chase, and I'm right back in my power again. So those are the things I think need addressing with the killer, whether you want to make the tail whip itself more counterable, or you want to treat it more like an Oni scenario where it's supposed to be absurdly strong, but it's easier to take him out of that power, or it's more effort for the killer to get into the power, whatever. There's a number of things you can do, but right now, I say this from the killer side. Again, I've been playing pretty much entirely killer. I've gone against this killer maybe twice. I'm saying it feels like it's not punishing enough to have a turret nearby. They don't feel like they do anything to me, and I think they should probably change that in some way. But that is it so far. Again, I'm still learning. I'm having a ton of fun playing this killer. It's really fun learning how to counter loops, what loops I can counter, what loops I can't counter. It reminds me a lot of early Huntress. I spent almost a year learning every hitbox of every piece of collision in the game, and I'm learning that again. I'm seeing what I can shoot over, what I can't shoot over. I would say this killer, as it stands right now, is a very strong A tier, one of the best, possibly top 5, maybe 6. So very, very strong killer. I just wish the counterplay was a bit more, not even obvious. I wish the counterplay was a bit more existent. And I think it should probably be along the turret aspect that we make a bit more strong. But that's it for me. Curious to hear what you guys think. I promise I'm not trying to nerf your favorite killer because I'm a survivor main or something. I've been playing pretty much only killer. I just, as a killer player, feel like it's a little unfair. But that's it. Thanks for watching.